So, hello, I've got Diletta, and then just make sure I got this right. Diletta Giorgolo.
Yes, very well. Diletta Giorgolo, great.
Okay. And she is head of residential for Italy's Sotheby's International Realty. Is that
Thank you,
correct?
Brian. That's correct. I started in 2010
Okay.
with only one office, and now we have 11 offices and 2 showrooms all over Italy.
So, I want to speak quite a bit today about your business, about real estate in Italy. And so give us a little bit of context. I want to talk about you, of course, as a person and your background. And I also want to talk about doing real estate in Italy and about Sotheby's. So maybe start a little bit with your background, your education, work history, what led you into real estate, how long you've been doing it, your current role. But let us learn a little bit about who you are.
Okay, so I can say that I'm the daughter of an Italian diplomat who then became ambassador. So I have traveled through all my childhood with my parents, and therefore I lived in many countries. And that's something that I value a lot because it's helping me with the foreign buyers and sellers here in Italy. So to give you an idea, I lived in East and West Germany in the 70s. So I lived in the communist part, then I lived in the other side. I lived in Vienna, in Turkey, in Switzerland, in Warsaw, and then my father was also in Jordan. And I must say, I also lived 6 months in New York while I was a student, as I studied languages, German and English literature, and I majored in history. That's who I am from, let's say, childhood until university. And after that, I went into kind of sales, but I was selling through international theater festivals, performances, which is quite different. And then before approaching the real estate market, I was working for an English company, which was renting holiday homes, luxury holiday homes in Italy. That's something I did for 10 years. And then 2010, I started with Sotheby's International Realty.
And so with the work that your father did in the embassy, was that on behalf of the Italian government?
Yes. My father served as an Italian diplomat, so for the Italian government, foreign affairs ministry. The funny thing is that usually diplomats, they either go to English schools or French schools. My sister and I, we went to German schools. We did everything in German. And our main language actually, now maybe it's not anymore, but it was for 30 years German. And many people say that when I speak English, you hear a German accent more than an Italian accent.
Got it. So how many different languages do you speak?
I speak English, German, French, and Italian.
Got it. And so this job that you had led you into real estate. Tell us a little bit about that. Like what got you excited about real estate?
So renting out properties is something completely different than selling properties. And with rentals, it's all about the renters and all the services they want. So I was scouting the properties, but at the end, the real relationship comes with the seller or with the buyer. And that's something that I really liked. I was, proud to show my country, and we're lucky enough being in the top end of the property market to show beautiful properties in beautiful places in Italy. So I feel a little bit I'm perpetuating what my father did as an Italian diplomat, of you know, promoting his country, and that's something I'm doing in a different way, but I'm still promoting Italy and its beautiful places and beautiful country, buildings and villas and apartments. So yes, and it helps, of course. It has helped to have had an international background. That's something that I appreciate a lot, that my father gave me the opportunity to live in different countries, to get to know different cultures, and also to know that we all have different perspectives. So I know what an American buyer or an Asian buyer would expect from a real estate agent, from his agent, which is not always easy because we really do have all different cultural backgrounds.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I want to give people a little bit of background on how you and I connected and what I want to accomplish on this call. I took a trip with my family to Italy this summer, and I actually reached out to Diletta, who connected me with one of her agents, and allowed us an opportunity to go view a property, a very unique property, which was by the German embassy, as a matter of fact. So that was kind of unique. And really the reason I wanted to do that, and by the way, Barbara is Barbara Alessio, and Barbara was delightful, and I have given back to her team great praises because she was such a special host to us and met with us for no other reason than just bringing us in and giving her time of us for very little in return. So we really appreciated that. But what opportunity that gave us was to really understand how real estate is done in Italy, how it's done in Rome, because my understanding is it's done a little bit different in each region of the country, although there's, of course, grand similarities there. But maybe how commissions are done might be a little different in Florence versus Rome and things of that nature. And so right now in the US, there are some big lawsuits that are going on. I don't know if you're aware of that, related to how commissions are done. And we're really drilling in on what's going on and how the business functions. And so it's always interesting to hear how people do business across the globe. So I connected with Barbara in person and had a great experience, and then with Diletta now in person over this call. And we're going to learn a little bit about how real estate's done, not only for the realtor community, but also for the consumer, so they can get an idea if they want to go and purchase a home in Rome, or if they want to go purchase a home in anywhere, you know, throughout Italy. They can get an idea of what that experience is like, how that may be different if they choose another country, whether it be for a second home or primary home. So with that said, we've talked a little bit in advance, Diletta, about some areas that we might want to discuss. Is there anywhere that you would like to start with that discussion?
Well, maybe with the experience as a buyer, and also for our colleagues. So the big differences between the Italian real estate market and the US real estate market, for instance, is that in Italy, we don't have an MLS system, and that most of the time agents are dual agents. So the one who has the listing also works with the buyer. I know this is maybe a little bit difficult to understand, because I know in many places, especially in the US, dual agencies are not allowed or are not viewed as something proper. That's why when we get international buyers, I always try to give a buyer's agent within the company that goes with this buyer to our other colleagues within the company. On higher budgets, it's easy also to collaborate outside the company. Sometimes there are other agencies that would say, no, the buyer can get directly in touch with us, which is okay. But I think especially as a foreigner, it's good that you get assigned to an agent that knows how your market is and what you would expect as a buyer. That's why agents like Barbara Alessio that you met, Barbara has lived in the US, has lived in France, has lived in Brussels, so she would never be arrogant, assuming something, but she would know that maybe in this buyer's hometown, it's done in a completely different way, and she would, work to make him understand why we do something in a different way. And at the end, I must say, most of our agents have an international background because we're selling a lot to international buyers.
Okay.
We've always sold to US buyers. In the last 2 years, we have seen an increase of US buyers, and which is good. I don't know, there are many reasons why. I mean, of course, most of the buyers are for second homes, because they know if they buy a second home in Italy, then they can easily rent them also out. And this is something we can, assist with too. But I think, yes, right. So to give you an idea, if you come and buy a property in Rome, the buyer would pay 3, maximum 4% commission, and the same would do the seller. And this is the big difference. The second big difference is, but I think many of you know, we don't have escrow accounts with lawyers. We have an escrow account that stays at the public notary. In Italy, only the public notary is allowed to do title check and collect the taxation, the taxes for the purchase. So it's important to choose a good public notary. We usually advise our buyers to choose a public notary that has experience with international buyers. And I would say maybe these are the two relevant changes and different approaches to real estate.
And then maybe I heard, since there's a lot of historical, properties there, the contract, first effective date of the contract to close period could be much longer. Maybe here in Texas, it could be 30 days, 35 days on average. There, I've heard it could be up to, maybe 6 months, or in some cases a year.
So it depends. Usually what we do is we do the title check. We do the most important thing with historical properties is that you have to go through two authorities. You have to go to the municipality to see if everything is compliant with the urban and housing laws. And the second thing is our landmark ministry. So if you're buying something that is a landmark property, there is a 60-day of preemption right for the state to buy the property. Wow. I can tell you that 99.9% of the homes we have sold have not had the preemption right. So yes, you have to consider 60 days if you buy a historical property, plus depending if everything has been collected. To buy a property in 30 days is possible, but rare. So usually I would say you should count with 3 months at least.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I heard you say is, and the biggest difference that I heard is that the buyer would pay, a maximum of 3 to 4% out of their own pocket. The seller pays usually a maximum of 3 to 4% out of their own pocket. I'm sure it's all negotiable. And so each side is paying. And then I assume that, since what you said earlier was typically the listing agent is doing both sides, and then maybe you assign somebody from the listing agent side as a buyer agent, or helping the buyer look around and then helping the seller negotiate. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, it's accurate. The main difference is that's why also in Italy there are less properties sold. So agents earn less than maybe a US agent. That's why maybe also the big difference. People always say, oh, so in Italy they get like 3 and 3, it's 6, and alone, or 8. Well, it's true, but don't forget that taxation for earnings in Italy is one of the highest in the world, whereas property taxation is one of the lowest. So for the buyers, they pay less taxes than in many other countries. And I always say the poor agent, from what he earns, a lot goes back to the state, which is why we have a free public health system, maybe. This is, you know, you have to find reason when you give your earnings to the state, you want something back. That's true. We have maybe old hospitals, but we have a very good free healthcare system for everybody. So this to give you some different cultural backgrounds, you know, the big difference between maybe some countries and other countries. So property taxation is very low, and income taxes are a little bit higher than they are in the US on an average. I know in the US it depends, it's state
by state.
Yeah, state by state.
So is there did you say that there was a sale tax? So when you sell a property, there's like an estate sale tax?
No. Initially the seller pays
or a transfer tax?
No. So there's only a transfer tax for the buyer. The buyer has to pay a tax, which usually is not on the selling price, but on the cadastral, so on the land registry value, which means, to give you an idea, that if you buy a 3 million euro property house, maybe the cadastral value is only 300,000. So you would pay the taxes on the 300,000, not on the 3 million.
And like what percentage of that 300,000, just ballpark?
So if it's a second home, usually it's a 9%. If it's a first, it could be none, or it depends. But yes,
but a reasonable amount of money.
Yes, a very reasonable amount.
Plus, they're paying the commission on their side. But
then the yearly taxation is also very low. This is difficult to tell you that how much it is, but it's also on the cadastral value. So just to give you an idea, the last property we sold for 1.5 million in Rome, they pay, I think, 9,000 euros per year property taxes. So which would be like 10,000.
Right, that's super low. So give me an idea of, and this is just real, very general ballpark numbers. If I buy I don't know, $1 million or a $2 million property in Rome, about what percentage or dollar amount are you going to pay in taxes upon purchase? And then I think we understand what the taxes would be ongoing.
Okay, so the taxes for the selling deed would be 9%.
Including commission.
Including commission.
Like
so,
all of your closing costs, yes. Sorry.
So all of the closing costs would be with the public notary. If you pay 3% commission, I would say at the end it would be a 4.5% all over, with including the taxation.
Okay, fair enough. That doesn't sound as bad as it sounds when we start breaking down the elements. Okay, and so the time period, it sounds like with the historical could be, you know, anywhere from 60 to 90 days, maybe 6 months in an extreme case. On average, what do you expect for buyers to wait to close on a property, just on average?
No, well, I must say, especially in Rome, for turnkey properties, when they're turnkey, they already have every permission because they usually have done all the works in the last 2-3 years. And we have seen some properties sell in 1.5 months. Okay. So it can, of course, if you buy a property that is older and hasn't had any kind of renovation done in the past 10 years, then you have to go and collect all the old authorizations, and the public notaries are really very careful in, you know, providing all the documentation, which is good. So I would say it's case by case. If you buy an old villa in Tuscany, it might be longer to get all the permissions and find all the old paper and authorization. So it's really case by case.
Got it.
It's case by case.
And so I also met with Marco Haney in your Florence office, and so that was a pleasure as well. And it was a quick visit. I popped by their office. He walked me over to a new development, and we just looked at the outside of the front of a new development, and we just talked similarly as you and I are about real estate in the area. And anyway, so it was a gorgeous new development. And he explained to me how difficult it is to build these properties, and how long it takes to build them, and how, the joke, he may not have said exactly this, but anytime you put a shovel in the dirt in any of these cities, you're pretty much going to find something historical, and then the government comes in. And now,
yeah, I have a funny story about that. One of my clients, he used to live in New York, but he was Dutch. So he decided to buy a historic property in Rome next to the Forum. Okay, so in the middle of our archaeological city.
right.
And he bought this property. It was a Baroque property, 16th century. It had a garden with a wonderful fountain. I think the fountain was 400 years old. And then he said, oh, my cellar, I would like to dig. And I said to my client, don't dig, because if you dig, you will find some Roman ruins. If they find out that you have digged and you found some Roman ruins, that's not so good, because they will come, bring archaeological experts, and then, close the building site. And of course, he didn't believe me. He said, no, let me dig. You know what he found? He found a 2,000-year-old church, so pre-Christian church. And then he had the option either to close it. They gave him the option. Either you close it, you leave it as it is, or if you want to keep it open, then our ministry will have the passage rights to come and visit it all the time. So he decided that enough history, he had enough, and he decided to bury it and to leave it like this.
Unbelievable. Well, it's amazing history in the city, and we did 3 weeks packed full of history, and anyway, it was an incredible trip. I will share, I saved a couple of just background pictures just to share. Of course, these are the token places that everybody sees, but the Colosseum in Rome, of course, this is, you can see the statue here. This is in what do you call it? So when I was in Sorrento, the volcano.
Pompeii.
Pompeii. This is Pompeii, which was an amazing. I spent probably, I don't know, 6 straight hours there. I just went alone and just went all over, because it would have been a disaster with my kids. So I ran around Pompeii for a day, and that was incredible. Just 2,000 years of history frozen in time. And then
Savona.
Yep, can recognize that. Let's see. Of course, again, the Pantheon. This was our trip to Venice.
San Marcos.
And then this was
yep.
This was either Amalfi or this is
Amalfi. This is more Amalfi than Portofino. This is Amalfi, but on a rainy day. Almost.
Yes. So we did one boat to Capri, and then we went around the bend to Positano, and then I did another day on a ferry over to Amalfi, and that may have been this one. Anyway, so those are our pictures. Oh, and then this is the convent. Yes, our family is there in the courtyard, and that place, as I was telling Barbara, it really should be, a government should come in and use that for their offices. It would be perfect.
But we have a lot of our government has some of the most beautiful buildings. I think they should leave it also to some of the private people. The idea here is to do like 5 super luxury condos for private
Got it.
families. That's what we're working at. And at the moment, we just sold a lot of units to US buyers in Rome in a similar property, but in the historic center called Palazzo Raggi. It will be delivered in 2025. And the big news in the Rome real estate market is, and not only on the real estate market, but Rome has seen this year the opening of some of the main hotel brands. So we have someone we just opened the Bulgari Hotel, the Four Seasons is opening soon, the Six Senses has opened just recently 2 months ago, the Mandarin Oriental is opening, and I think Rosewood is opening. So there is a lot of, big brands coming into Rome, and we're trying to help them also do the branded apartments, which is something that you have in the US, but we don't have in Rome. And then this summer, I don't know what happened. I think it was called on Netflix, White Lotus.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to go to Sicily. And now we have all the American buyers that
Interesting.
are coming to Sicily. So we're selling quite a lot in our Sicily office as well. A lot of history. But to give you an idea, so Italy was a second home market since 200 years. I remember the highest sold property the highest sale that I did was in Positano. It was Villa Astor. Villa Astor was sold in 2012 by me, and it is a seafront property. And so it has been bought by an international buyer. And some Italians were saying, why should we sell our jewels to the foreigners? And I said, well, the first owner of Villa Astor was Lord Astor, who was a US buyer in 18th century. Then it went to a Russian princess, then it went to a German entrepreneur, and then it came back to an Italian. So, Italy has been a second home market since many, many years, I would say centuries. And I think that, the nice thing is that people who buy historical places in Italy, they value this a lot. For them, it's like a status symbol. They're buying, like some people would buy a Rembrandt, someone would buy a Baroque palace or a medieval castle in Tuscany, or, so I think it's always nice, even if it's going from one hand to the other hand, people who buy historical places value them a lot, and they are very proud, and, they take care of the maintenance and to keep the original flair, not to destroy them. And then, of course, we also sell very modern properties. That's true. But it's nice to see how everybody is proud to own a piece of history in Italy.
Well, speaking of, I've been listening post-trip to books on the history of Italy. So one of them is called The History of Italy that I'm listening to right now. And it's fascinating to go back after you go and see a variety of these things, and to go back and to listen, starting in the 8th century BC. And, they just finished going through the Carthage Wars, and then all of the Macedonian, wars, and the influence over the Mediterranean, and how it used to be more Greek influence, and then it moved to Italian, and how Italy was fragmented until like the 1800s, but how they Rome slowly built its influence out through military and other influence. Anyway, and of course it's such a beautiful place, and so lush, and so well located in the world. But all of the history there is absolutely fascinating. The food, of course, I think is what America is fascinated with. Is we all—
Me too.
Yeah, we all, dream of and wish for more fresh, more abundant food. And so that's what most people talk about when they talk about visiting Italy is the amazing food, which when I was there, it maybe everybody knows this, but you have the the primi and then the secondi meals, but it's like 2 meals. And we always just ate the primi meal, which was, usually the pasta, and you could still add protein. And then the secondi meal was like a whole nother thing, which was like a fish or a meat. And then there's the dessert, and then there's the drink. So the budget that we spent on food blew us out of the water on this whole trip. And we were expecting, a big budget, but it really did hurt the pocketbook. That was for sure. It was a good one. It was good.
Yeah, right. It's true. And I must tell you, I always joke about this, but Italy, I think with Japan, has the highest life expectancy. And I think it's mainly because of so much fresh and organic food. And well, the thing you said about primo and secondo and dessert, actually, at lunch, we usually only eat one, because otherwise you would need a 3-hour siesta to go back to work. So the Italian mentality is changing a lot. It's true that on Sunday, if you are on the seaside, you will have a first course, a second course, and then maybe a dessert. It's true. Yeah, I must say that the freshness and the fact that the food is all grown mainly organically in Italy gives it this, difference in taste. Like the fresh tomatoes, if you know where to buy them, you buy them that have a different taste and everything. And I think it's still a very healthy life that you can, have in Italy. It's true there are some, conceptions of Italian being still very lazy, and it's not. But it's still in a, a very healthy way of living. This is what I think. I lived in so many countries, and when I was 28, I decided, well, I like all the countries I lived in, but at the end, I chose Italy for my children, for my family, and for my work, and I'm really happy.
Well, I want to also point out a couple of things. Of course, politics is the overwhelming area of discussion in our country right now. But one of the areas in politics is the housing and transportation. And so those are two, we're talking about housing and purchasing and selling houses here. And we're going to get back to that in a minute. But even in Austin, Texas, where I live, we have, particularly in Texas, not so much in New York, not so much in San Francisco, and not so much in Chicago, but we are spread out. So Austin, Texas is not a very dense place. Even, downtown is dense, but not relative. It was an old 80s town and there's some towers, but around it were single family homes. And then that started, and then homes around that. And then you hit the hill country and you're limited on what homes you could build in the hills. But, now it's just kind of urban sprawl north, urban sprawl south, urban sprawl east, all single family homes and some apartments. We're in a housing crisis. We don't have enough housing. We don't have trains. We do have a train in Austin, but you wouldn't know it if you live here. There's a couple of lines. The city council they consider themselves progressive. They're trying to do trains, but the cost is astronomical. They said it was 5 billion. Now it's like 15 billion. It's really hard to put an infrastructure for trains when you don't have a lot of density. People don't really use the buses that much on average. Anyway, so you go to Italy and you have, first of all, ancient cities where there's a lot of density and a walkable lifestyle, which is nice. Now, personally, I grew up in Texas and I like my elbow room. So I enjoy going to places like that for vacation, and all the walking and all that lifestyle is fun. But then I like going back to my, space. That's just me. But from an environmental perspective, having that walkability is desirable. Having the trains, particularly the speed trains between the big cities was amazing. We were able to take, with our family, we didn't have a car the whole time, so we were able to take speed trains everywhere. And so that's enviable to be able to have that. And then you had said earlier, again, there's not a lot of sales in Italy relative to, let's say, the US. We have gajillions of single family homes in the US. They just throw them up like little matchboxes. It's true. I mean, they just, especially in Texas where you have all this land, a lot of these cities are built out, I assume, in Italy, and it's probably a little bit harder to build new developments, I'm assuming, in the countryside. I'm not sure.
Very, very strict rules. That's our biggest problem. So we don't have a lot of new developments. We are doing regeneration. So we would bomb an existing building and rebuild it completely new from the scratch. But there is a lot of protected areas around the city. So few new developments. There is another big thing you were saying. So one is transportation. Transportation in certain cities is not perfect. In Rome, we don't have a subway that is as well connected as in Milano. Why? Because of all the archaeology.
Right.
This time we dig, we have the problem. We only have 2 lines for such a large city. That's not enough. I'm doing like you said, I'm walking to my office. This is really super cool. But I use a lot the high-speed trains. So high-speed trains in Italy have really changed a lot for us and for the tourists. I must say, before I had to take an airplane to go to my Milan office. So Milan and airplanes are always a bit more of a hassle because of security, 1 hour earlier and all the things. Now I can take a train at 7 o'clock in the morning, and at 10:30 I'm in Milano in my office.
Right.
And I take the train back at 7 and be back and sleep at my house. Florence, with the car, it would take me 3 hours. With the train, 1 hour 25. So some parts of the transportation in Italy, I must say, are really top. Rome, some people are always complaining we could have more buses, but the Italians always complain more than any other people. Nothing is perfect. I definitely agree we could have a better transportation, but at the end, I must say I find the Roman traffic is not as bad as I just recently went to Miami, and they told me they really have a big problem. And I was really surprised because I didn't go for about 10 years and I saw it really changed a lot. So they have a lot of new developments, but the transportation is lacking. And they told me, if they have a Sunday football game and theater and this, then, getting into historical center is difficult. So, yes, transportation can be an issue. Politics, in Italy, we change government every year or every second year. It does not really affect everyday life. It's something that I know when I say this to especially to Germans and to other countries, you have a very stable government. Well, the problems are the same. And I must tell you that the best example was Belgium. I think Belgium had 1.5 years without the government, and the economy went well. So I always say, yeah, government can be an issue. There can be bad governments, but governments come and go in democracies. So even when we had a time with better or worse politicians, the good thing is we live all, like you and us, we live always in countries where at the end, there is always a change. And I think there are countries that have really worse problems than we do have. So I always say, be patient and wait that the next government come.
There's always good and bad with every new administration. So now I won't speak much more about traffic, but when I planned my trip, just for the listeners who go to Italy, when I planned my trip, it was actually a lot of planning to consider having a car. I would have liked to have gotten a car if I were in Tuscany and driving around potentially to different areas or something like that. But there were city centers and there's these zones that if you drive into them, you get fined. So, and those are usually the historical and city centers where you have to stay out and park and kind of figure that out. And it's the unknown and figuring that out where I finally said, you know what, I'm not going to even wade into that because it's already difficult enough to figure out where I'm going, where I'm staying, you know.
City centers, it's because of the sustainability. Most big cities, not the small ones, they do protect their historical center. I mean, there is a way of getting in without being fined, but I would say that if you want to visit Italy, take a car only if you want to visit like Tuscany or rural areas.
Mhm.
If you are in historical cities, you're better off without a car.
Well, our train I was tracking was going over 150 miles an hour on those speed trains easily. It was really incredible how fast you could go. I think it was a 5 hour, 5.5 hours from Venice all the way down to Naples. It was so fast, and that's a long way. Anyway, so it was a very efficient system, and again, an enviable one. I really wish we had that in Texas, where you could go from Dallas to Austin to San Antonio, or anyway.
Absolutely, because you get, I used to travel a lot with my car. Now that I can use all these fast trains, I get all my work done during the 2 or 3 hours I'm in a train. I work. You can even choose the silence car. And the silent car is a car where you're not allowed to talk on the phone. You're not allowed to talk to anyone because people that are in the silent car want to work. And it's where I get most of my work done in the best ways. No phone calls, no nothing. I just turn off everything, and I know I have 2 hours where I can completely dive into my work. And it's cool. It's really cool. I must say the fast trains are one of the best aspects that I can say about about Italy. Yeah.
And you get to see a lot of the countryside, and it was really, really beautiful. So we've talked a little bit about the buyer side. I think we covered the commissions and how those are paid. A lot of it is a listing agent and a company will basically work both sides of the transaction. You don't have an MLS, and so I guess a lot of the properties are found by, if you're a buyer and you're going into Italy, you want to find the most connected realtor, I'm assuming, or how are you going to make sure you get in front of all the properties that are available?
Well, so of course, if you go on the Sotheby's International Realty website, you see the most beautiful properties in Italy.
Yes.
But if you want to be sure that you do a check, then you have to go on 2 or 3 of the real estate web portals. So we have kind of a Zillow, similar to Zillow. We have immobiliare.com, which does not work with an MLS system, but most of the realtors would go on 2, 3 of these big web portals and put the homes for everybody to be viewed.
To see. Okay. And about how long does it usually take to find and get something under contract if you decide, you know what, I'm going to go buy something in Italy?
If you want to go and buy something into Italy, the most important thing is that, Brian, most of the people say, I want to buy something in Italy. And then we go, yeah, where? Because it's so different and it's so specific. So I would say, again, like we said before, it could take you, if you were talking now of the seller or of the buyer?
Well, just a buyer, about how long would they expect? When I have a buyer come to Austin, they're going to ask, well, how long it'll take us to find something? And for us, usually you can do it pretty quickly.
Yeah, for us, I must say the quickest is usually 1.5 months. And the longest, I had buyers but that was the buyer's fault, who went with us for 2 years. They first started in Florence, then they say, oh no, maybe I prefer Rome.
Understood.
And then again, they bought in Lake Como.
Yeah. And I've had those buyers. Of course, we all have buyers that take their time and draw it out and decide one place and then another, and so on and so forth. So, and I would have liked to have gone to Lake Como, by the way.
Next.
Yes, next time. So shifting over to the list side, if you already have a place in Italy, what is there to be expected that we haven't already talked about on the buy side? You want to go sell your house. What do you do? Who do you call? What do you expect?
If you're a seller.
Hmm? That's
Okay,
right.
if you're a seller, it depends on in which price range you are. Usually if you go on the higher range, what you do is you go to an international brand
Okay.
to be sure that it gets a big exposure, and there aren't so many. So usually what you have to do is go to an agent, bring all the documentation,
Hmm.
and then he would do the first due diligence to see if everything is compliant. I always say I would have a surveyor do also a check, because there is so much documentation in Italy, I think more than in the US. So if I'm a seller, and we have a lot of international sellers. So just to give you an idea, one of our latest sales in Rome was a referral from one of our Texas offices. I don't remember which one. So we had an American seller.
Mm-hmm.
He was a Texas seller. We sold his 8 million euro home to another Texas buyer.
Okay.
So that was really cool, because American and American, two, both from Texas. So they knew how to do the whole thing. The
Right.
buyer was educated by us, but then they, at the end they met, of course. It took two years to sell the property, because but this is something that happens, I think, in the US as well. If the seller has very high selling expectations, then, it takes a while to let him understand that, his selling expectation is a little bit too high. The problem with Italy is Italians don't like to sell. Italians are proud that this house has been for over 400 years in their family. So they see it as something really bad if you sell a property. And I always try to explain to them that in other countries, people are proud to sell their home, because then they buy something new, they want a different lifestyle. This is something that sometimes in Italy, sellers, they just tend to say, I don't want anybody to know that I'm selling, otherwise they think that I need money. And I say, no, nobody would think you need the money, but there is a big cultural problem. It's very different. So imagine I had a buyer in the Dolomites, a seller in the Dolomites,
Mm-hmm.
whose family owned the house for 1,100 years. So 800 after Christ, and he was selling it 2,000 after Christ. So he said, Diletta, I feel like I'm betraying the heritage of my family. It has been in our family for almost 1,200 years. And I said, I know, but one of your children lives in the US, the other one lives in Germany. They don't want to own a castle. It's just that, the history is changing. They will buy a beautiful home in New York and another one in Hamburg, but life goes on. But it's, you have to understand that it's a big burden for someone who has owned a house for so long. And this happens to us very often.
That's really, really interesting, because people get attached to their houses here, of course, but there's not that sort of history to look back on where it's been passed down generationally. And so that could be really, really hard to let go of for, very good reason. But you're right. I mean, houses are just houses. And when you listen to these stories of the history of Italy, the stories are about conquest and about new adventures and about growth and expansion and change, right? And as opposed to just establishment and, laying roots. Life is always changing. So that's a big part of communicating to sellers, like, it's bricks and mortar. They're just things. And we have to understand that there's other bricks and mortar elsewhere that you can craft a new life. I consider homes very much for phases of life. And
Yes, exactly.
for lifestyle, right?
Exactly.
And that's
And our
always good.
children, they have a different mindset. They want different lifestyles. And so it's okay. I just think, but it needs some time. It's a cultural change, I would say, that is going on. It's the new generation versus the old generation. And it's okay. And the nice thing is, just to give you a funny story, one of our colleagues in the US, he just bought 10 years ago a nice little townhouse in Umbria. Umbria is between Rome and Tuscany. It's the unknown Tuscany. It's beautiful. And he bought this wonderful little townhouse. He said, Diletta, I just spent 50,000 euros buying it. And then I bought the neighbor house, and then I bought the neighbor house, and now he owns almost the entire hamlet. And just to give you an idea, down on the ground level, he has Etruscan cellars. I mean, Etruscan, that's even older than Roman. And he has done a beautiful winery inside the Etruscan home.
Wow. That's really cool. So what are we missing going back to the seller side? Is there anything about that process that we haven't talked about? You mentioned doing a survey, basically bringing all the paperwork, going and finding it. You recommended a big brokerage that has a lot of exposure, setting expectations, especially high value properties, maybe high expectations for the time period it could take. What else? What else should our sellers know what to expect?
The problem is with the seller is that not having an MLS system, especially sellers that are international, they want the comparables. So comparables are okay, but not easy to do when you don't have an MLS system. So the thing that I always say to international sellers, be aware that I can give you comparables of what we have sold, but I cannot give you the same kind of comparables that you would have in the US. Or for instance, if you're selling an apartment in Rome, I can give you comparables of apartments that were sold in the same road, in the same neighborhood. But when you're selling a villa in Sicily with frescoes of the 17th century overlooking the Greek theater, there is only one maybe that has this kind of frescoes with this kind of views and with this kind of vineyard. So I always say to sellers, be patient, because it's not as easy to give you the right value of your property, because most of these properties are so unique that there are no comparables to this home. The good thing for sellers is that in Italy, after 5 years, there is no capital gain. So usually people sell and if you're a seller, you don't have to pay any kind of taxation.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So to that point, if you're trying to figure out the value of a property, I guess there's two parts to that compared to here in the US. We have appraisals and we have loans. So, you've got cash buyers, and a cash buyer doesn't have to get an appraisal. They can, but they don't have to. And then when the vast majority of buyers do get a loan, the lenders require an appraisal. The appraisers are third-party companies. There is an arm's length between them and the mortgage companies based on law. And so they have access to the MLS. They'll give you their value analysis. And, my opinion of appraisals is that they can come in at three appraisals can come in at three different numbers still. So, and you still have those properties that don't have comparable sales. You still have the unique properties and similar situations as you're suggesting, but it's probably magnified significantly in your cases and these ancient cities and et cetera. But are people, what's the average person doing? Is the average buyer getting a loan, and do the lenders require appraisals?
So yeah. In Italy, the average buyer is asking for a loan, but the second home market that we deal and especially the top end that we are specialized in. 90% of our buyers are cash buyers.
90%.
90%. That said, I agree on the appraisals. We see that every bank, it's like going to 3 different doctors. It's like going to 3 different lawyers. They are all different. So once you trust somebody, you have to stick to that person to give you the right value. Banks, of course, in different periods send it, the appraisals are always something bit, yeah, I always say you have to know who the appraiser is, because these unique properties are very difficult to get a good appraisal. I think usually it's the agents that have a better knowledge of these kind of markets. But then, of course, yes, the average Italian buyer, first home buyer, would go through a loan like everywhere else. Of course, if you are an international buyer, usually you don't get loans that easily, because Italian banks are very restrictive. They want to be sure that if they lend their money, they know that they have enough financial background and it's difficult to evaluate a person from a different country. So usually I say, if you want to have finance, if you are a US buyer, you should get the finance back home.
Got it. So the vast majority of your clients are cash buyers, is what it sounds like. People getting loans are usually local, it sounds like. Understood. And then of those who are getting the loans, about what on average are they putting down as far as percentage cash down?
Well, in Italy, usually you have to leave at least a 30% deposit, also 30%. Give a 30% down payment to the bank. Mm-hmm. That's why, Italy is one of the countries where people are very conservative. We are big savers. So the banks are also rather strict. And before giving out money, they want to be sure that, you can pay your loan. And so they would be very, very strict in giving out loans. But of course, yes, usually there were some foreign banks that would giving like almost 100% loans, but this was like 10 years ago. Now, no bank would give you a loan, at least a 30%. And the funny thing is that, the top end buyers usually get financed. The last buyer who bought with us the 33 million euro property, of course, was financed by one of the top banks, because he was a billionaire. So he got I think a 60% financiation on the purchase of his home. But that is with us very rare.
Got it. Understood. So if you go and list a house, and you sit down with a seller to sell your services, what are you going to do to sell a home? So, why should we hire you?
So what we say usually to sellers is, I know you do this in the US more than we do, is prepare their home. Usually they're overflooded with personal items, right, and a little bit tired. So we try to prepare the homes. We try to be very thorough with the title check and with the due diligence, so that when an international buyer comes, he can buy it quickly. I say they expect that we agents do all the check, and this takes long. So a good agent, some agents, just to get the listing, they would go, okay, your house is perfect like this, and we go, let us check together that your home is ready to be sold, that your home is ready to be sold to an international buyer, which is different as well. Mm-hmm. So we usually also help the sellers prepare the home to get a good presentation. We work only with top-end photographers. I know there are some agents that, of other brands, that they would just do a quick photo shooting. No, we think that you should prepare your home and be able to show the best sides of your home. And then what we do is not only use our international exposure, but as you do, Brian, I usually go every year 2-3 times to our lead countries where we have most of our buyers. So I go a lot to the US, I go a lot to Germany, and I go and get buyers personally, because I've seen that every time I know an international agent, he starts referring buyers to us. And again, not only the Texas seller was a referral, but the 33 million euro buyer was a referral. The 10 million, the 20, so we work with referrals, and this is something that our competitors don't have. Even if they're international brands, they don't get as many referrals. And we have a nice presentation, which is called Significant Sales, which we show to sellers, and we say, nobody ever has sold in Rome this kind of properties. These are the properties we have sold. We feel we can sell your property quicker than any other brand.
Interesting. So what else should we know about the home sale? If you're, you know, is there anything else that home sellers should know from you about selling their home in Italy before we move on to the next subject?
No, I think that the most important thing is really that they have everything in order, and that if there are problems, and there are no properties without problems, if you think of the, you know, that they are old properties. So let us check prior. If there are problems, we can solve them. And they have to trust agents. They don't want to make their life difficult. They just want to avoid an angry buyer who wants to sue the sellers. So what we try is just to make sure that then the selling process is easy.
I think before we move on, that raises one other or a couple other very short questions about the contract process itself. So are there any standard contingencies during the contract, like termination contingencies where a buyer can get out of the sale? And then in that regard, you had mentioned lawsuits and things like that. Is the government, you know, more buyer or seller friendly or balanced? You know, where do you see lawsuits? What's the most, where does the risk lie in buying or selling a house? And how do you avoid those lawsuits?
Okay, I would say that the best way to avoid any problems for a buyer, and this is something that a seller has to accept, is you do a binding proposal, which is subject to due diligence. So the buyer says, okay, let us say I will buy your home at 2 million. So you put the price point down. If after doing the due diligence of all the authorization, I'm happy with the due diligence, then it becomes binding for both of us. So sometimes if you don't have a good agent and you buy a property without putting some conditions, I always say, put all the conditions you want to check. You want to build a swimming pool. Okay, so check before you buy that in this area you can build a swimming pool. Or just recently, a guy is buying in a protected area, a villa on a lakefront. He wants a tennis court. So we said, you put down that you need 1 month to check with the local authorities that they will approve the tennis court. Then it becomes binding, and it's good because it means the buyer and the seller are binded by the contract and have to sell to the buyer and cannot sell to somebody else.
And who figured out whether they allowed the tennis court? You?
Yeah. No, we need an appraisal, and so you hire a surveyor that would talk to the local authorities. Okay. We would suggest who, okay. And we know how long it can take. So we would say, okay, we give you 30 days. We will ask the seller to option the house for you for 30 days until you have done all your checks. And so then it's the public notary who will say, okay, the house is compliant, now we can sell.
So what are other standard contingencies of a contract that allow a buyer the option to exit the contract?
If any of his conditions are not met, and if the house at the end is not compliant with the urban and housing laws, then the buyer gets out, gets his deposit back, and gets the same amount. So he would get double the deposit back. Let's say you buy a property that is 1 million. You do the proposal and you put down, at the proposal, you put down like 5%. So it means that you have given 50,000 euros as a deposit for the proposal. Then you say, okay, let me check. I have 30 days to check if the house is ready. Then we go to the preliminary contract. If at the preliminary contract, where you usually put down another 30%, you do the preliminary contract and it's allowed, it's still some of the authorizations are missing, you know that they will have to be ready for the final deed.
Did you just say 30%? I heard 5% at
5%
first.
when you do the proposal.
Right, understood.
Okay, then after you did the proposal, the whole contract becomes binding, but you still have time to get all the permission. The seller is the one who now has to be compliant and get all the permissions through the public notary. And usually it's done in 2 steps, the preliminary contract and the final deed, okay, after the proposal. You can go through 3 steps. Either you do the proposal and then if the house is ready, you go to the final deed and you buy it and you become the owner. Or if it needs longer time, what you do is proposal, preliminary contract, final deed. Usually proposal, it's 5%, preliminary contract, it's 20 to 30%, and then final deed is the balance. But what happens is you did the preliminary contract, you left 30% at the escrow account at the notary, or you have given it to the seller. But by the Italian law, if at the end the house is not compliant at the final date, then it's the seller who has to return the amount that you gave as a deposit and give you also a penalty because you lost time.
The buyer gets the penalty.
The buyer, yes,
amount.
The buyer is. So I would say actually the buyer is almost more guaranteed as the seller. The seller, in order to be compliant, has to do a lot of homework.
And so what's like, how much would a penalty be that the buyer could actually receive if the seller doesn't comply?
The penalty is, again, if you left 50,000 euros as a deposit and then you left another 30%, so let's say you left, I would say, all in all, you left 200,000 euros, 250,000 euros as a deposit. If the house is not sellable, you get your 250,000 euros back. But if there is a main problem and it's the seller's fault, you get 250 plus 250.
What?
So
really?
Yes.
That's
That's
huge.
why that's huge. That's why we always say, in order to avoid a dispute, let's try to do the due diligence before, because once money is, handed over, it can get tricky.
Wow. So does that happen very often?
No, thanks God, it does not happen very often.
Interesting.
Usually it happens only when you have done the small deposit, because usually sellers and buyers tend to check before the preliminary contract.
So it sounds like it can almost always be avoided by doing the homework up front.
Yeah, the homework is very important. And sometimes I say to international buyers, make sure your agent speaks your language really well, that you don't get lost in translation. That's very
right. That's like literally speaking, not figuratively.
no.
Interesting.
So to give you an idea, stupid things, you say lost in translation. I know it, but I forgot that in the US, the ground floor is the first floor, and the first floor is for us, the second floor. So for you, the second floor. So I was telling to the lawyer of a US buyers, oh yes, so he's buying the ground floor the first floor apartment. He said, no, he's buying the second floor apartment. I said, no, it's written in the paper, it's the first floor. And then I said, oh my God, I forgot that in Italy we have ground floor, street level, first floor. And in the US, it would have been first floor, second floor. And we had like a big quarrel for a few days because of this, only because I forgot that in the US, the ground floor is the first floor. So you see, it's stupid things, but they're very important when you buy a home.
Right.
So make sure your agent speaks your language.
Wow. Well, that is new information to me. So thank you for sharing that. I'd like to, I guess, shift over to some, I guess, more broad information, which is anything that you'd like to share with us about the sales in your country, but it could be your most memorable client or your most memorable client experience. It could be good, it could be bad. And also, before I forget, just what you love about real estate in Italy and what you would think could be improved. There's a number of things that I like and dislike about how it's set up here in the US. Everybody has an opinion, but I'd love to hear a little bit about both of those areas of discussion from you.
So to be very honest, I think what I would like, let's start with the negative. I would like to have an MLS system. Mm-hmm. I would like to have no dual agents. That's how I think we could improve the Italian system. On the other side, I have been told that there are less problems because the public notaries are not only lawyers, but they are the public official of the state. And they are now responsible if a house is sold that is not compliant. So now, since 2012, a public notary, before he signs, he will make sure that there are no problems on the sale of the property. And apparently, there are less errors in Italian transactions, real estate transactions, than any other country, or maybe compared to other countries that I know in Europe. So again, MLS system would help a lot to do a whole quicker search for the agents, for the buyers. The other great thing is that there is such a great variety of different, properties in Italy are very unique. Every property is different because we don't have so many new developments. So there is still a larger variety. What else can I say? The most difficult sale or the funniest sale.
Wait, let me go back for a second. You said that you wish that you had more variety of housing and that you
No, we have it. No, that's the funny thing. It's never boring. I see, I have a property that has a Caravaggio in it. I have a property that sees the Colosseum and in its main window. I have a modern property. I have a seafront property. I have a property that has a sea grotto. So we have so many different properties that every time it feels like it's something completely new. And it's so stunning.
Is there enough housing in Italy right now? And is it affordable enough for the young generation coming up? And what's your population growth like?
So we have the lowest population growth almost in the world. Most people think Italian families, a lot of children. Unfortunately, we have a very low rate of demographics. This is changing, of course, with all the people coming from abroad. We're still more affordable. I think we're still more affordable than most of the countries. People still can afford to live in the historic areas and in the cities. They don't have to move out. It's starting to become a little bit more expensive, maybe in Milano. I still think that Italians are doing better than many other people, but of course it's changing. I think what I call the gentrification, it's a worldwide gentrification. I think it's changing. The changes now are global. So even if in Italy we still have a rather affordable housing, it's becoming maybe more similar to other countries. So we will see what will happen. But I think I still think, and I'm sure that Italy is more affordable to Italians than for other places and countries where they have to put taxation on foreign buyers to avoid that too many foreigners are buying homes, and then that the native population cannot afford to buy homes. Yeah.
So what's the job market like for the up and comers, and why do you think that the population growth has stagnated there?
The population growth is stagnant. This is maybe very cultural. It is difficult for young Italians to find really top-end paying jobs, but it's a mentality. I think that I know this sounds, maybe some Italian will not agree with me, but I have lived in different countries, and I think that being very traditional, Italian young people still don't like to move out and go and find a job in Milano, or, you know, before leaving their families. They prefer to stay there, and even if their job is not well paid, they wouldn't just dare and go to another city where they could find the job. So again, it's a very big cultural shift. Other European countries, they're more flexible. I would say a German is more flexible in going to study in another city in his country.
Interesting.
Italians are very conservative still, but we have a lot of older people and we miss the younger generation. So, you know, it's a very delicate moment.
Very interesting. So what can you share with me about your most memorable client or your most memorable listing? Anything special that is worth sharing?
Well,
and by the way, client experiences, good and bad, funny, anything interesting?
so funny was when we went to do the sale of the 35 million property in Positano. My client comes with a wonderful boat and he docks to the little, how do you call the docking place for the boat of the villa.
Oh, okay, got it.
And what happens is the pilot goes back, and the buyer's wife, who was dressed really in a very elegant way, she fell into the water.
No.
And I thought, this 35 million euro sale is never going to happen because she will be so fed up. But at the end, she was not, and the house was sold. So
Wow.
sometimes, you know, it starts in a bad way. Another funny story is my first Asian client. I didn't know that. She gave me a name, a European name, and I didn't know that it was not, she had her email with the first name and second name, which was, I don't want to say the name, but let's say it was like Carol Smith, okay? And I didn't know that Asians have sometimes European name just to work with. And then when she gave me her passport, the public notary said to me, I'm sorry, but this is not the same person you told me was going to buy.
Oh no.
So that was again a cultural shift. And she started, the same lady said to me, Diletta, I want to buy a villa on the sea. So for 1 year, we saw only seafront homes. And at the end, she bought a ranch next to the Prada outlet because she wanted to go and do the Prada shopping as often as she could. So just to give you an idea how difficult it is to know what the client really wants to buy. So 1 year of seafront properties, and then we bought near the Prada outlet in Tuscany, which is really far from the sea. And yeah, this is one of the, but I can tell you, there are so many stories that it could take hours. And that's the thing that I like about our job here and doing real estate in Italy. It gets a lot of confusion. One time a buyer wanted to see, he has sent us a house in Positano. And then he called me really angry. Your agent is not here and I want to see the house. And I said to him, yeah, where are you? Send me your Google map because my agent is waiting exactly in front of the house. And he was in Portofino instead of Positano.
Oh no.
Which is 9 hours drive difference. So Portofino, Positano, he mixed the two areas.
Wow.
This is another funny story.
That is funny. So what is it about, I guess about Italy? Well, actually, let me go back for a second. Who is it that you see that's coming to Italy? Who are these, particularly these billionaires and these wealthy people that are investing in Italy, that are buying the villas and things like that? Where are these people coming from? Who are they? Are these people involved in politics? Are these people just, random people that are just intrigued by Italy? What influence is laying roots there on the peninsula?
So I would say that old money buys projects and buys home that they want to renovate. They have a romantic view of a place that they want to do as they like. And usually these are people that are 50 and above. The younger people, we have a lot of millennials and tech buyers. They want turnkey. So it really depends who buys. The turnkey properties are usually the younger ones. They don't have time to waste. They don't want to, do the renovation. They don't want to go through the whole process they want it now. So that's why I say turnkey apartments go to usually younger generation. Backgrounds can be very different, like top lawyers, tech people. The billionaires are usually the ones who did the money from Palo Alto to we had the Russian oligarchs. Now they cannot buy because there is a restriction because of the war. We have, usually these kinds of people.
So there is a tech contingent. Is there a large tech buyer presence in the country?
No, they're starting now. So we the millennials and the tech, they come, and usually they still don't know. They have a very romantic idea of Italy, but then they are more practical, and usually they want new developments. So usually it takes longer to find something for them because they want the ready to move in properties, and there aren't so many.
So a lot of the properties that you list or sell aren't turnkey and aren't updated. Like even these majestic estates, 30 million euro estates, they need to be updated.
Updated, yes, not renovated, but updated. Even properties that are within, we have some big estates that are so huge with castles and 20 farmhouses. And sometimes you have to renovate them, or at least update. Some are turnkey, but I would say 70% are at least that they need an update.
So where, for those buyers that are listening, where should they purchase a home in Italy? I know that's a tough question.
That's a tough one, but let's try to be very quick. If your lifestyle is golf and seaside, like really only golf and seaside, then you have to buy a property in Sardinia. If you are interested in history, you have to buy a home in Rome. If you like the nature, then you have a wide option. Do you like the Tuscan verdant hills? That could be Tuscany and Umbria. Do you like seafront? Do you picture yourself in a beautiful villa like George Clooney? Then you have 3 lakes. You have Lake Maggiore, Lake Como, and Lake Garda. And it's too long to explain the differences between the 3 lakes. Are you a big skiing fan? Then you want to come to the Dolomites and buy a beautiful chalet. Or do you like the seaside, but you also like the history? Then you should go to Sicily or buy in Apulia, which is the heel. Or would you like the famous feeling of the Amalfi Coast? So we had a lot of buyers this year coming back for the Amalfi Coast or Capri. Do you want to be seen with the jet set? Then you have to buy in Capri. So I think I did most of the areas in.
That's a good coverage, but what if you have a desire to fit in with the local culture and people? Where's the best place to go? It's always easier to go if you can afford it, but where would I want to go within Italy where I could plug myself into the roots and the people, where I could feel that I could connect with people, spend time with people?
That's a good one. So I've seen that many people were very happy with Umbria. So similar to Tuscany, but even in Tuscany, there are places that are like very international, but you still can find some off the beaten track villages where even if you're a foreigner, they would welcome you, they would have you do the locals' life, the real locals' life. But I think even in, I think, yes, it's you could really buy something still very unique in Sicily. Okay. Or in Umbria, or outside of Rome. There are so many nice hill areas around Rome where you could do the easy local lifestyle of these Italians. But even in the mountains, I mean, the good thing of Italy, there are still very unknown places in each of the famous places. So even Lake Como has the very expensive properties that are all around certain areas, but then on the other shore, you can buy in a more authentic place.
Got it. So are there any clubs or associations that are popular among people that come that they could plug into? They could be exclusive. So,
very exclusive is for the owners of historical buildings. That's a very famous called the Dimore Storiche, so heritage, the club of the heritage owners. That's one club. Then
tell me about that. Is that just one specific club of one building, or is that of
no, that's the association. If you are the homeowner, if your home is a landmark property, you can apply to be part of this club. And every state has its own landmark historic owners association, and then there is the nationwide, and they do some events. So you could become part of it, and then once a year you can open your castle to other owners or to a specific group of people that are interested in being part of this association or club. Italians are not big fans of clubs, especially for no, not especially, apart for sports clubs. So if you come to Rome, you could become the member of some of these sports clubs. This is another place that some of our international buyers, if they buy a home in Rome, they want to be part of the best tennis club in Rome. Or we don't have a lot of gated communities, but there are gated communities with some clubs. There is, like, to give you an idea, something really new in Rome is the Soho Club. There is a Soho Club in London, and you can become member of this exclusive club. So this is, yeah, more sports exclusive clubs. So golf clubs, if you're a golfer, there are some exclusive golf clubs in Italy, or beach clubs that are private owned beach clubs. This is something that is very popular. So you would go to a private beach resort and become the member there, which is very exclusive.
So I heard you say golf, tennis, beach, sport, and those, when you said sports clubs, that's what you're referring to. It's,
yeah,
you know, and that would be similar to here in the States. It would be your, you know, we have the Austin Country Club across from where I live.
like a country club, exactly like the country club. And you would have your spa inside the country club. You can have your tennis, now we have something very similar to pickleball, which is called paddle tennis, which is everyone is inside a special pickleball tennis club. This is like very, very fashionable in Italy right now, or famous tennis club, skiing clubs, like in the Dolomites. There are special, famous, exclusive skiing clubs where only your children would go with the best skiing teacher. So there are some different clubs, yeah.
So how do you become a member of a club? Like at the club in my area, because it's full and it's exclusive, you have to have 2 golf members that sponsor you, and then you have to get like 10 or 20 letters from other members, and they have to kind of carry your flag, as I like to say. They have to advocate for you, and then you get on a waiting list, and then they go in front of a board who then, you know, if they like you after a couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years, then they'll offer a social membership to you, or maybe a tennis membership, and then 5 or 10 years, maybe you get the golf membership if you're fortunate enough. But if you're somebody special, then you can potentially, all of that can be sped up to becoming a golf member quickly, but you have to be somebody really special and connected. What is that like there?
Oh, usually for exclusive clubs, you have to have usually 2 members that present you. You have to do a down payment, and they have to check who you are. But usually you get in. Like in Rome, the most exclusive sports country club, where you can do rowing, tennis, swimming, paddle, and it's called the Aniene Club. There you have to get the presentation of 2 members, but you also have to have 50,000 euros just as a down payment that you will never get back. Of course, they take it only if you're accepted. So I think it's more of a wealthy club. Mm-hmm. There is only certain clubs where you cannot enter and money doesn't count. It's the clubs for the aristocracy. So we have a certain club where you can only be accepted if everybody in your lineage, in your family, is from aristocracy. But that's only one club in each city, and it's truly something European. To give you an idea, it is paired with the Knickerbockers in New York, something similar, I would say. But usually, yes, you need a presentation, but it's not always so difficult. They just want to be sure that, you know, the person that is presented is somebody that has no problems with the law, that is a well-educated person, and that you can become member very quickly.
So can you tell me, if I were a buyer, you know, what are maybe the top 2 or 3 clubs or locations that I might consider if I was considering anywhere in Italy?
So if you buy in Rome, the most exclusive club is the Aniene Club, which is like a country club. If you buy in the southern Tuscany area, there is a sea club, which is very exclusive, and it's called the Macchia Tonda Sea Club. There is also the golf club in Tuscany at the Argentario, which is very exclusive, the Argentario Sea Club. And in Sardinia, there are 2 or 3 beach resorts club that are very exclusive. The most exclusive maybe is if you get the membership to the Cala di Volpe hotel, which is also, by the way, the most exclusive hotel in Sardinia. I would say those are the most exclusive. And then there is a club in each region that is exclusive, but those are the most famous. Like the Aniene Club is so exclusive, just to give you an idea, that the owner, one of not the owner, the president of the Aniene Club is the one who made the entire campaign to get the 2026 Winter Olympic Games in Italy, which will be held in Cortina and Milano. And he, you know, it's kind of a lobby. He's a very, very famous, not only president of this exclusive club, but he's a big lobbyist for the Italian sports world.
Got it. Interesting. Well, yeah, and I'm just curious how many buyers, and maybe since you don't have the younger generation of buyers, I just wonder how many buyers are coming in saying, tell me where to go and which club to be a part of. But maybe it's more somebody got intrigued, particularly people coming from outside in, they're intrigued with an area. And so it's more about the house than it is about the club. I don't know.
Usually it's more about the house or the specific area that they want to be next to 5-star hotels or 5-star or 3 stars restaurants. So it depends. If they have a very high spending lifestyle, then they want to make sure that there is a club or something exclusive where they can hang out. Absolutely.
So can you tell me how many, just very big ballpark number, I'm sort of changing subjects and then we can wrap up here, but how many number of agents there are in Rome, not just with your firm, but like how many real estate agents there are in Rome?
Real estate agents, I really don't know too many. But another thing is that some of them are not licensed, and it's a federal offense. So make sure that you go with a licensed agency and agent. I must tell you, we really don't know. I can tell you that there are as many agents as churches, and you know that in Rome there are a lot of churches. All in all, we don't have the numbers. I can tell you that we in Rome are 20 agents for Rome Sotheby's International Realty.
So we know the number in Austin because we have an association, and you know,
you have 4 different associations. It's
okay.
like in politics. We have a lot of associations. So the main associations in Rome are 4. Some are not, and there are some agents. That's why we don't know the number, because some agents are not with any association. So we should go with our Chamber of Commerce ministry and find out how many have the license. That's something we could do.
Interesting. Yeah, here you can get your real estate license and not be a part of association, but in order to access an MLS, you have to be involved in the association. Yeah. So the vast majority of agents are going to be involved in the association, except commercial real estate. They don't use an MLS. They use a private third-party website. It's called CoStar mostly. And then there's one other third-party website, but they're not in, you know, we have commercial on our website, but they're in our MLS, but they don't use it much. So anyway, so we have, like, in our Austin board of realtors, we have I think it's around 19,000 members for Austin, the greater Austin area, which is 2 million people. So probably, you know, similar. There's a lot of real estate agents here. Probably a lot more than Rome even.
Too many. I
Too many.
agree. Too
Yeah.
many. They should be stricter with, with certain things.
Is there any ideas that you feel like could improve the business in Rome or in Italy or nationally in general in our business?
Oh, generally with the referrals, I always, since we work so much with the referrals, I always say, and now I remember our seller was from Phoenix, in Texas, that it is good that once you talk to a client that you refer, it doesn't matter if I'm referring him to the US or you are referring him to Italy, that the agent gets to the other agent as much information as possible, okay? So what I usually do is I send out a little PDF on how to buy in Italy so that they have an idea of how the selling process is, and that we educate as international buyer agents, because we are Sotheby's international realty agents, that we listen to the culture of real estate in the main countries we deal with. So I come very often to the US to learn about the US, and there are always more and more of your colleagues in the US, Brian, that as you are doing now, take the time to do a long conversation with another country to understand how the other country works, because we are all getting global, more global world. And I see that the number of US buyers and sellers in Italy is increasing a lot. So it is not enough to be a good local expert agent. We have all to become internationally open-minded and knowledgeable agents. That's something that could improve a lot.
Well, this is a great step forward to that. This will be really helpful to the agents in my area to really, for those who are interested in listening, to get to know what it's like to buy and sell a home in Italy, what it's like in Italy in general. You've given me so much great information that's really authentic to the culture and to the time period that we're in. And thank you for hosting me through Barbara while I was in town, and that was helpful.
Thank you for inviting me.
I did get
Thank
to.
you so much to invite for this invitation, for your show, and for the time you took, and the great questions you have asked. Thank you. And I hope next time I can come and meet you and do a property tour in Austin again, as I love to see what is on the market on the other side. So let's hope we meet soon again.
That sounds perfect. And what I was gonna say is just you had recommended some amazing places to eat. Like the only place I didn't get to eat when I was when I was in town, I think was it you that recommended the Gucci restaurant? Somebody had recommended that restaurant. I don't know if it was you or maybe it was the other group in
I
Florence.
haven't recommended the Gucci. That's the one, that's the Florence, our Florence agents.
They probably recommended that. I wasn't able to get in or squeeze in there, but I did go to several that you had recommended, and it was very helpful. That's one of the hardest parts about planning a trip is where do you go to eat, getting reservations to these places and all of that. So that was fantastic. But anyway, please do reach out if you need anything. If you have any needs in Texas or any questions, particularly about the business, I will do the same.
I will, Brian. I will. Thank you really so much. It was really fun having this show together, this Zoom show.
Sounds good. All right. Well, I will end the show, and then I just wish you the best, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you so much. Speak to you very soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.